If you
And
hear
we are
something.
live with, well, dare I say, a legend himself, New York Times bestseller. He's host of the Rubin Report, co-founder of Locals, and somebody who probably owes a lot of rent to some leftists because he spends quite a bit of time in their mind. How are you doing today, David?
Eric, I'm good. You know, legend. If I'm a legend, then legends ain't what they used to be. But I definitely do spend a lot of time rent-free in leftists' heads. I'm always amazed, actually, the amount of people that spend all day long watching my videos to selectively edit them and make it sound like I said the reverse of what I said, or they take something from 5 years ago to make it sound like I said it yesterday, or just like the series of people on YouTube and Twitter that devote all these accounts. It's like, man, listen, I think what I'm doing is pretty decent. A certain amount of people seem to like it, but the devotion that these people have to destroying me, I almost admire the passion at some level, I suppose.
Yeah, what is it? And is it because you're seen as an apostate or a heretic because you were a young Turk? So, you are worse than anybody on the planet because you were a traitor. Whereas Ben Shapiro, well, he obviously has never been their friend.
Yeah, I think that's it. They don't like an apostate. You know, most religions, most cults don't like when someone walks, right? And I would say that the woke left and the progressive movement as a whole, at this point, it basically is a cult. You have to agree with it on pretty much everything. You have to agree with it the second it arrives at any of its conclusions. And if you don't, they will take you out. And what they hate more than just someone who walks is someone who thrives when they walk. So if I had just walked and just sort of disappeared into nothingness, then big deal, okay. But I walked, and by going to what I felt was true, by doing what I felt was right, by building bridges with the guy you just mentioned, the very scary Ben Shapiro, and talking to, Stanford economist Thomas Sowell, and talking to Dennis Prager and Glenn Beck and a whole bunch of other people who I have some political disagreements that, I'm happy to get into if you want. They've all welcomed me into their world, and we don't have to agree on everything. And that's what's so fascinating to me right now, because to me right now, people think, oh, it's left, right, it's conservative versus liberal, Democrat versus Republican. It's basically woke versus conservative, meaning it doesn't mean you're conservative, meaning you're a Republican Party member, card carrying, but conservative meaning you're trying to conserve what was the United States, the thing that we had just a couple of years ago that was so precious and great, and still what I think is, the jealousy of the world over, and that everyone still wants to come here. I mean, that's what Biden was talking about today. Everyone still wants to come. Nobody wants to leave. All these people who are trying to destroy the country and rip it apart and take it down and everything else, they don't leave. They keep telling us how horrible it is. They can't find a better place to go. So I would say woke versus conservative, in that the rest of us, if you're trying to conserve liberalism, as I'm trying to do, if you're trying to say conserve libertarianism or just conserve conservatism, it's all of us versus those guys. And there's a lot of us. They're just very loud, and they've got institutional power and the power of big tech and everything else.
Would you agree that the left-right paradigm has become a distraction anymore, and it's really a top-bottom, where you have authoritarianism up and libertarianism on the bottom? And you can even have people who are slightly leftist who might agree with right-wingers if they believe in freedom. That seems to be an underlying principle.
Yeah, so look, I sense I know enough about your views of the world, and you obviously know enough about mine, that we're both bottom-up type people, and that we want people to be free. I want the average person, I want every legal citizen of the United States, there's roughly 350 million people, something like that. I want all of those people to live under the exact same rules, and I want them all to have laws that treat them exactly the same. And then it's on you and your family and your local community and all of those things to get out there in the world and get what's yours. That's all freedom can offer you. And our founders set up a really wonderful system around that. Now, was it perfect, and were they perfect? Of course not. Have we done wrongs in the past? We had slavery, women couldn't vote, gay people couldn't get married, Japanese internment. There's a long history of things that we did wrong along the way, right? But we've always bent things to bring more justice. The arc of justice has always bent more in the way of freedom than in the way of tyranny. Now, it's starting to turn in a lot of ways because of the people who are always screaming about how terrible the United States is. So I would say, yeah, it's sort of, when I say woke versus conservative, that's very much in the cultural version of it. But I think another version of it, Yeah, would be basically you're an authoritarian or a libertarian. It doesn't mean you're a card-carrying member of the Libertarian Party, sort of what I was saying before.
That's a problem too.
Yeah, which I'm happy to talk about too. I mean, there's a huge mess over there. But it doesn't mean you're a libertarian in that sense. It just means that you believe in individual liberty and that equality under the law gives you a chance to pursue that happiness thing. Or you believe if you just give enough power to something above us, this is the authoritarian approach, obviously. Right. If you just give enough power to government, if you just give enough power to Bernie Sanders, who has never accomplished anything, but if you just gave him enough of someone else's money and you just gave him the force of government to do it, he could fix all of your problems. So obviously I'm not that. So it's either you're for individual people making the best decisions for themselves and then associating and building up that way, or you're for top down. And, a lot of people unfortunately are for top down right now because I think they're confused about what the issues actually are.
And fear. I mean, it's a great time for authoritarianism.
Oh yeah.
Think about it. Everybody's afraid and they're looking for anybody, tell me it'll be okay. Tell me I'll be safe. Give me guidance on what I need to do. Now, I kind of call myself a lazy libertarian, if that gives a spectrum of where I am, because I think that full-blown libertarians are whack jobs themselves. When you get all the way to anarcho-capitalists, and I'll go at it with Michael Malice sometime, hopefully, but
yeah.
He's such a troll that I don't know if he even really believes in that completely either. I think he's just poking. I personally think fundamentalism and purity is the biggest problem you can have. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, first off, on Malice, I think he's one of the greatest political thinkers that we've got. And yes, he plays that role. I always call him the Willy Wonka of politics. He plays that role of sort of troll, truth teller, jabber, like he does all of it. He does all of it. And I think he's truly a great political thinker. It's just, he's really an enigma wrapped in a riddle, wrapped in a YouTuber. It's quite something. Look, I love libertarian ideas and I love exploring that stuff with the ANCAP people. I love talking to Malice. I've had Brian Kaplan on, who's an ANCAP guy. I've gone to many, Ayn Rand events and libertarian events where all of the guys how far can we really disassemble the state? And, my feeling is, well, okay, we could really do that. And we'll sort of end up in some sort of version of Mad Max, which maybe in some way will be a little bit better than what we've got right now. But I do think what we have right now is pretty precious and pretty decent. And we just focus on the negatives. But by and large, and I guess I would have to put the lockdowns aside for a moment to say that it's pretty decent, because obviously there's a lot of authoritarian stuff going on with that. So I'm happy to discuss that further, but I'd have to hedge a little bit because of the lockdowns. But I love those ideas. But the reason I never say I'm a pure libertarian, I think, is sort of what you're getting at here, which is that I do believe you need some level of government to somewhat keep the wheels on the system, to somehow make sure that if we've got a road here and the road's curving up there, to make sure that the paint is drawn in a way that if you're going at night, you're going to see it. That's, and I don't mean that literally, because you could do that privately. You could have private roads that are doing that. I mean that sort of metaphorically, meaning you need some system to show you the guardrails of society. And I would say our capitalist democracy is the best of a bunch of unfortunate things to corral humans. So I sense we're probably in a similar spot on that.
Yeah, and I wanted to explore this with you because I think it's kind of funny, because first thing I notice, everybody is trying to get you to say that you're a conservative or you're still a classical liberal or whatever. And I think that maybe that's the biggest problem of all, is trying to pigeonhole people into, okay, we got a label, boom, you're covered. And the reason why I worry about that is, like, I think libertarians go too far, and there's things like, if I'm saying it right, thalidomide, which can have babies born without arms and legs. So the fact that we had regulations here and didn't allow that to get sold meant we had a lot of babies that were born in better shape than Germany and Europe and things like that. So there are some standards that probably should come into place. I do think that we probably should pay for roads. It's not going too far, because that is something that we all use in one way or another. Well, you may not drive on my road. I might get a package that goes on your road. Mm-hmm. So it does kind of factor. But that's sort of where I wanted to explore and just get your feelings on that. And I think I basically have it. I want to pivot a little and be self-serving about interviewing.
Take it
because
away.
your mentor is a legend who, sadly recently passed away.
Yeah.
Larry King. And I'm curious because one of my favorite quotes from him in his book was actually not his, but it was his buddy Herbie Cohen, who said that, Larry, you're dumb. That's why you're so successful. And the fact that Larry did no preparation of any kind, and actually felt the less prepared he was, the more effective he was. Now, I've watched you since probably 2014 or so. So I saw your very short period at Aura. What was that?
Yeah, Aura TV. Yeah.
Aura TV.
That was after the Young
King
Turks. Yeah.
and on. So that's about where I picked up on you, is right about there, right after Young Turks. You seem to research a bit, but I'm not sure. What is your stand? How are you as an interviewer?
I do a little bit of both. I've talked about this a little bit before because people usually ask me something about interview style, and it's a little bit of both. So, for example, I always felt, and I remember watching Larry when I was a kid, well before I knew him, I would watch him on CNN. And I always thought, oh, here's this decent guy. I just thought he was like this, and he had the suspenders on. There was something sort of interesting. He had that deep, incredible voice. And he would have, what I loved about the show was, it's like, it's 1988. I'm 12 years old. I would turn on the channel and it's like, he's got Magic Johnson on Monday. He's got, O.J. Simpson the next day before he's a killer. Then 5 years later, the whole other situation. But, then he's got, Johnny Carson on the next night. He's got some lawyer on, and then he's got like an animal guy. And I just thought, or he'll have a religious leader, or, President Reagan, or whatever it might be. I just thought, what an eclectic mix. And this guy, he just gets to sit there and talk. And yeah, he never prepared that much. I mean, when I got to know Larry professionally, which was one of the great joys of my life, I would see he would have his blue cards in front of him. We actually, when I was at Aura, we actually shared the same studio. They would just reskin it differently for both of us. So they could literally just remove the walls in essence, but we were in the same physical location. So sometimes his desk would still be there and I'd see his cards and it would just have a word or two on it. And he'd have 5 or 10 cards. And sometimes he looked at them, sometimes he didn't. What I've always found is that, first off, you need to be curious as an interviewer. You just have to be curious. And when I would go out to lunch with Larry, the last time we went out to lunch, actually, a little bit before lockdown, we were at the Palm Restaurant in Beverly Hills. It was one of his main stops. And it was like everyone there knew him. He was an absolute regular. He'd say hi to the busboys, say hi to the waiters. But he genuinely, the busboy would come by to take his dish away. Hey, how you doing? How's the family? What's going on? He was truly curious about people. He was as curious, as to what the janitor in the building was doing as to the guy that he was interviewing. So as for preparation, my general philosophy is that if I'm curious, I'll get to the right questions. So I try not to prepare that much, but I would say that there are some caveats to that. Sometimes, I'm sure you know this. I mean, sometimes you're interviewing somebody, you're chatting with somebody, you need to know like a specific chronological order of events. You need to know a specific moment that something happened, or an actual quote or something like that, in which case I'll do a little bit more. One of the things that has shifted for me is back when I started on Aura back in 2015, I used to try at least, and I did it probably 90% of the time for the first year, read whatever book the guest was coming on for. And usually people are either promoting a book or they have a book in the past. And I would pretty much always read the book, or at least a huge portion of it. These days, I really don't have time. My producer prepares a little something for me. I'll always glance through. Some of them I tried to read a little bit more, but just my days have become so crazy that I can't. So I would say it's really sort of case specific. I'll give you one example. So when I interviewed Jordan Peterson a couple of weeks ago, who obviously I toured with and I know very well, and is obviously he's been through a tremendous amount in the last couple of years. My feeling was, well, there's a lot of human stuff I want to talk to him about our experience together and being on tour and what he's been through medically and health-wise over the last couple of years. But I also want to go through the book. There's 12 new rules. Let's hit these rules. So I had those rules laid out in front of me. So I think it's a little bit of push and pull. It's sort of like, who do you have on? Where are you at? And where are you trying to get to? And if you can kind of roughly figure out those things, then you're okay.
You prepare more with, let's say, a Stefan Molyneux versus somebody else? Because I know you've commented before that he did make you feel uncomfortable, not necessarily as a person, but as a subject matter, that you knew you were going to get hate for it. So did you put any kind of strategy in ahead or preparation to say, okay, well, if I'm going to interview him, I really need to go at it with this angle?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question, because out of all the interviews I've ever done, I think that was the only interview. I'm 99% sure this is true. The only interview I've ever asked someone else for advice beforehand. I actually did make a call or two to some people, in my inner crew, and say, hey, I'm interviewing this guy, this race IQ thing, it's not really my thing, but, he seems to be making some moves online. He's an interesting character, whatever it might be. I thought, but I really want to do this right. And it's not a core topic that I'm always discussing. I don't think I've ever discussed it on the show since, maybe once or twice in this very ancillary fashion. So the thing that this guy seemed to spend most of his time on, the thing that he was sort of known the most for, was not something that was really in my main wheelhouse. So I had to figure out a way to approach it in an honest fashion. And basically I thought that the right question to ask, which I did ask several times in the interview, was, why do you care so much about this? Because that to me was what was sitting under race and IQ as a topic. Is like, why do you care about it so much? Now, look, people can look back at that interview and say that I did a fine job or a terrible job or whatever it might be. It's one out of, I don't know, I've probably done thousands of interviews at this point. So it's one out of that. But I know that's one that people still try to get me on, that you sat down with this evil guy. And by the way, he's since been kicked off Twitter. I'm not sure if he's on YouTube anymore. So which is worse, whatever it was that he was saying and whatever it was that was discussed in that interview, or what has subsequently happened to his ability to communicate with the world? I think that's up for debate.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not against. I feel like you should sit down with almost anybody. I guess I'd have an exception if it was like I would be just really uncomfortable and I don't think it would serve me personally very well. I might not sit down with somebody, but like the most extreme example right now probably is Alex Jones. I would have him on in a heartbeat.
Look, Rogan has him on all the time, right?
Well, he's interesting. It's like there is so much there to dig. It's like, what? Are you there? Are you sane? Are you crazy? What? Are there other times that you feel genuinely uncomfortable, or I'm going to throw out an example, or was it actually just so funny that it didn't bother you? And that's Candace Owens and Blair White.
Save Dave. Listen, I trended on Twitter. It's the first. I've only trended twice, and that was one of the times. That was the first time. I didn't know what I was walking into when that thing happened. I certainly did not expect that. And look, hashtag Save Dave trended on Twitter. I had, these two girls really going at it, and there were so many memes about me, and somebody did a Curb Your Enthusiasm meme with the song playing with me just exasperated sitting back. When I realized what had happened, when we did the interview, right, or the sit down, whatever you want to call it, that the battle royale that we did, I was like, man, what did I get myself into? But I enjoy what I'm doing, and I like the back and forth. And we finished up, and I was like, all right, it is what it is. Then I opened Twitter, and I see all hell breaking loose. And then I start seeing all the memes and everything. And I was like, boy, look, I guess at some level, this doesn't paint me in the best light. And perhaps I should have really, laid the smack down more and commanded the audience more and the attention more. Yeah, it's possible. But in retrospect, like when you mention it to me just now, and it hasn't been mentioned to me in a while, it's sort of nothing but fond memories in a bizarre sense. Because also, if you think about it this way, I mean, look, Candace basically went to take over the world after that. Like that was just one of her very beginning moments, and she exploded after that. I'm not exactly sure what's going on with Blair, but I've had a pretty good run since then. So, it's all just part of it's all the gestalt of all the stuff that gets you to where you're going to go.
Well, Candace is the other apostate.
Oh yeah, she's a very, very dangerous apostate. You can't have a black woman leaving the left. I mean, come on now. And they despise her. They absolutely despise her. And I'm telling you, this is a great person. She is a dear friend of mine. People watch the friendship unfold. I mean, the first time I had her on the show, really, I kind of put her on the map. I didn't even know what her name was till that day. We knew her as Red Pill Black. She was known as Red Pill Black on YouTube. And right before I sat down with her, I said to my guys, well, I can't call her Red Pill Black. What's her real name? And they said, Candace, okay. And Candace actually stayed at my house, stayed over for dinner till about midnight. We spent about 10 hours together, debating, laughing, drinking wine, eating pizza. And we've subsequently become great friends. I was at her wedding last year. She's great. She believes in what she's doing. She's fearless. I have never met someone as fearless as her. She's true. She's an extraordinary person, really.
Okay, and she had that effect on you. Obviously, Jordan Peterson had a major impact on your life. I think.
Yeah.
Maybe more than any guest you've had. I'm not sure. And Larry Elder, I think, has had a pretty large impact. Are there any lesser known guests? Because I love to discover, the not talked about treasures, if you will.
Yeah. So very quickly on those two, I would say Larry at an intellectual level, because of that moment, that systemic racism moment that also went viral, that, at first I was like, seeing it on Twitter, oh no, people are, Larry Elder just destroys libtard. But then within 2 days, it was like, oh, Rubin's not a bad guy. And then it allowed me to open my world. So it became a beautiful thing. And Larry and I are good buddies now. Jordan at a very personal level, because we toured together for a year and a half. His book was setting people straight, and it helped me set my life in order. So I'm just immeasurably, I'm in awe of Jordan, truly. I mean, I think his intellect and humanity is one of a kind, really. Like, there aren't many people like him. Were there other guests that affected me in that way? Nobody's jumping off like sort of just like that, but I can tell you I've gotten some really good friends out of this thing, which has been a nice bonus. So Douglas Murray, who I think is one of the greatest, clearest, cleanest thinkers, the author, British conservative, who I just think is wonderful. We've become very good friends. Peter Boghossian, at Portland State, associate professor of philosophy, who's just, he's one of the last decent liberals trying to fight the woke left, has become a good friend of mine. Michael Shermer, a whole bunch of other people. And then, some of the guys that I mentioned before, like, Prager was here for dinner with his wife last week. And that I've been able to I've met so many of these people who, some let you down and some don't. And when you find the ones that don't, and then there's that hand extended for friendship, and you go, wow, we could be on this very cool, bizarre adventure together. That's pretty good.
I'm curious, and a lot of this is going to be me projecting on you, because I see myself as you 20 years ago, before you even started. I'm so far different, but it's still kind of the same road. But I, for example, I interview a lot of lawyers. I interview FBI agents. I interview a wide variety of people. But I myself am nothing but a middle-aged dude who does some IT work, things like that. Where do you place yourself on the spectrum? And do you find yourself being informed as you go?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the best part of doing this, of the interview part of what I do, is that you get to sit down with incredible people. It used to be mostly in person, but now even this, like, you get to talk to great people. Whether it was, Richard Lewis, one of my favorite comedians, that got to come to my house and come into my garage because that was my studio, or Jordan Peterson, or Larry Elder, or just like the litany of other people, or, even someone like John Kasich, he's just sort of an average Republican, but he was a presidential nominee, and he came to my house, and there were, security guards with him, and, or Trump Jr. came and Secret Service were there. Whatever it is, like, what a cool adventure. And you can learn something from everyone. You don't always learn because they know what they're talking about. That's the best way of learning, sure. Right? Like, it's really nice when someone really comes in and says something that is true, that is really real and true and new and cool. That's the best. That's absolutely the best. But you can also learn when someone comes in and you can kind of tell that they don't know what they're talking about, or that they're just sort of giving lip service to things or something like that. I could mention one or two like that, but I don't need to throw anyone specifically under the bus. But that does happen. You're interviewing someone and you're kind of like, boy, I don't think they have a really good handle on things. I think one of the things that's been a little bit of a challenge for me is, as I've become much more outspoken in what I think, and now I do a 5-day-a-week live show that's just direct to the camera, so not me interviewing somebody. As I've done that more, as an interviewer, it makes it a little more challenging, because, to get back to Larry King, who you mentioned earlier, nobody knew what his feelings were about anything. Once you let your feelings be known, well, if I interview someone that really goes against those thoughts, I still want to treat them with respect, and I still want it to be an honest interview. I'm not there to debate them. That's a different interview show. Now, I've debated on my show. I've debated about abortion with Ben Shapiro. I've debated about the death penalty with Dennis Prager. I've talked to people that are against gay marriage, like Bishop Barron. It's not as if I expected Bishop Robert Barron from the Archdiocese in LA to suddenly rip off his frock and announce he was for gay marriage while he was on my show. And he got a lot of crap for it from, say more right-leaning people. And I got a lot of crap for it from more left-leaning people. And that made me think this is a beautiful thing. And we've done subsequent interviews for both of our channels. So that's really nice. But yeah, you'll learn from some, and some you'll learn that they're not sure what they're talking about and everything else. That's the beauty. That's the beauty. But it does get a little more difficult as you're known for your thoughts. Because as that happens, if someone comes on the show and says something that is, I'll give you a good example of this. I had Marianne Williamson on the show. Remember her? She was the Democratic candidate for president and with the crystals and the whole thing. And she came into my studio, and it was very obvious she was a collectivist. She believes in white collectivist guilt, generational guilt over slavery. I don't. I am not guilty for someone else's sins, much less someone else that was, 100 years ago, who I wasn't related to. And by the way, I'm not guilty for my father's sins, and my child won't be guilty for my sins. It's a very different way of looking at the world. She's a collectivist, and I'm an individualist. But I felt I want to still treat her with respect. I want her to be able to be heard. So what I did was I stopped halfway through the interview and I said, hey, I just want to stop for a second and just say, we have a fundamental impasse philosophically, which is that you're a collectivist and I'm an individualist. I just have to say that so that the audience watching isn't like, oh, Dave's just getting steamrolled by her, because I still wanted to treat her the way I would treat everyone else. Otherwise, my show becomes, okay, I agree with, I bring on the people I agree with and I treat them with respect. And then every time someone comes on that I don't agree with, it's a debate show. And that doesn't seem right to me.
Well, here's a touch of irony, bringing back up Michael Malice. Marianne Williamson's book had a profound effect on his life.
I'm shocked and appalled.
Well, what? She made one particular statement. I guess she used to work heavily with AIDS patients who were, in the 80s, AIDS was a death sentence. It was horrible. Oh, yeah. There was nothing worse. And she put it in their minds, or came up with a statement of, instead of thinking of AIDS like, oh, you're going to be okay, everything's going to be perfect, think about it as it could be a chronic condition like diabetes, and you might lose a foot and you might do this, but you can live for a long time like people do with diabetes with a chronic condition. And Michael Malice took that to be a way to think about North Korea. Instead of saying, oh, they're going to have freedom and all that. It's like, well, you can't just go from where they are now all the way there. But if you can get it to where they don't feel like, oh, they're going to get shot or they can never leave the country, or, it's just some minor things that would be an improvement. And I just thought it was really ironic because I can't think of two more opposite people in my mind in terms of collectivism and freedom.
That's super interesting to me. And that also shows you why you should talk to people, right? Like why? Because look, do I believe in all of the things that I wrote about in that book and that we're talking about here, and individual freedom and liberty and the founding documents of the United States and capitalism and free markets and human ingenuity and all of that stuff? Of course I do. But is that to say I can't learn anything from someone on the other side? No, well, of course I can. The question is, will those people talk to me without trying to take me out? That's become harder and harder to accomplish.
Okay, and speaking of being around guests that are accomplished and things like that, a friend of mine, which I know Viva Fry.
Love Viva. He's great. I love seeing his star rise. By the way, the guy's just an absolute all-star.
Not only is it the talent, he's probably one of the most generous humans I know, and has been kinder to me than anybody I could ever imagine on the planet. So I throw out all the praise in the world. He wants to know what your biggest professional fear is.
Wow, that's a good one. My biggest professional fear. Well, I think for a really long time, for the bulk of my career, it was, am I ever going to kind of get over the hump? You don't know what that hump is. I mean, that's the thing. When you're doing it, whatever it is that you're doing, if you're following your path, you want to be a great painter, you want to be a musician, you want to be an interviewer, whatever it is you want to be, there's always the striving for it, the thing in the distance you're trying to get to. And the irony, of course, is you never fully get there, because once you get there, wherever there is, well, then there's another star in the distance and another star. That's sort of that's the journey of life. That's the beautiful, fun thing. I would say for many, many years when I wasn't making much money and I was struggling, and I had all the, years of struggling as a stand-up and times when I was broke and in debt and, I was eating ramen and all that stuff. And I was on the road doing stand up and like, is this ever going to happen? Am I ever going to get on television or anything? Or even then, when I left the Young Turks and then we were at Aura and we were doing really well, but the network wasn't doing well. And it was like, well, is the network going to fall apart and then I'll be destroyed again, taken out? And then, when I left Patreon eventually, which ultimately led me to starting Locals, it was like, all right, I'm leaving Patreon. Am I about to screw my whole career again? Well, as time's gone on and I've done the right thing and I've built a good team around me and we've made smart financial decisions and all that sort of stuff, I do feel like I'm over that hump. I don't feel like it's going to go away tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like, I suppose I could say something ridiculous in this interview and, the cancel people the mob will come after me, but I'm my own boss. So the chances that I call myself into my office to fire me are pretty slim. That would have to be a pretty egregious thing for Dave to walk in and Dave, well, you're out, Dave. So I think
Corolla model.
Yeah.
Right. A pirate ship.
Yeah. Look, you build the ship and we've built a really nice, tight, lean operation here. And that's what I'm really so proud of. That's not really the answer to the question there, but I would say getting to the point where the fear of like, it's all going to disappear tomorrow, or I'm going to be broke tomorrow, or that sort of thing, that I wake up without that sort of existential angst anymore. And that allows me to move forward and do the types of things that I want to do, whether it's talking to the camera, doing interviews, being interviewed, whatever it might be. And I think when you can get over that, boy, you can breathe for a second. Because I think in probably most of my years from 20 to 40, I'm 44 now, but in most of 20 to 40, there wasn't a lot of breathing. It was just go, 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 go. And I think now it's like, all right, we did something pretty decent here. We built something nice. I'm happy. I'm content. I still want to work. I'm working hard. I'm doing other projects. And now let's see what's next.
At what point did you feel, best term I can think of, established, in the sense that, because everything is so precarious. I imagine even now you still get nervous on some interviews, but when did you feel like, okay, I'm a known quantity. I'm not going to go completely away. Yeah.
I don't know that there's a good answer to that, because partly it never goes away. That's sort of what I mean about the hump. It's like, I know sort of at the granular level, it's like I'm over the hump. I'm okay now. I've got some money. We've got a nice business. Like we have built this in a sensible way that it can survive the storms and all of that sort of thing. But I think it always kind of sits back there. Like, for me at least, it always sits back there. Like, is this real? Like, did I actually, like, when people come up to me and say such nice things, or they send me things or write things, it's like, the truth is I'm just a regular person like everybody else. Like, you're just a regular person. I'm just a regular person. We're all on our little adventure. But one of the cool things is when you do these types of things that we do and you can affect people, and then people come up to you. We did a live event for my Locals community at a bar here in LA a couple weeks ago. About 100 people showed up. People had not been out in a long time. A couple people had tears in their eyes just to be out and about and see other people and thanking me for building a community and talking about politics in an honest way. And it's like, man, when I got home, like, I felt something deep, because it was like, whoa, like these are good people, and people are alone now. People are broken and afraid and worried about the world. And if I've had a little something to do with helping them out through that, helping them weather that storm, then that is pretty great. But the piece of like, oh, could it all go away tomorrow, or am I legit? Something like that. Like, I think it just kind of always sticks with you a little bit.
Well, and as you know, there's enough people attacking you, I'm sure, that give you humility. It's like, if you ever feel like, oh, I'm unstoppable, be like, well, hold on, let me go check out this channel. Nope, they still hate me.
The truth is, I don't watch any of those things. Like, I know that they exist. I know that they exist, obviously, because, they can just come across my computer one way or another, but I don't watch any of them, and I have no time. I have no time to watch the things that I want to watch, much less the things that I don't want to watch. But I sort of said this before, but this idea that these people are so incessantly obsessed with what I'm doing, Even if, now, first off, they do so much selective editing, it's crazy. But even, because people do send me some clips, so I don't sit there and watch, but every now and again, you accidentally see something. But even if I was doing, all this bad stuff, it's like, man, if you think I'm the problem in society, like your guns are pointed the wrong way. That is a strange thing about YouTube also, because I've really noticed this. There are a ton of lefty channels devoted to taking out people on the right. I don't really know of any channels on the right devoted to taking out those lefty people. Now, I'm sure some exist, but I don't know. But there's an exceptional amount of them on the left that are just spending all day long trying to get clicks off the people on the right. And by the way, when they do this is just because they want clicks off my name, right? Like they're not doing it because they're so wonderful and they're trying to cure the world of the evils of Dave Rubin. Is that if you put Dave Rubin's name in the YouTube thing, you're going to get some clicks.
Right now, and in fairness, I'm interested in how you get over it because, I fortunately haven't had a lot, but I mean, you got a hit piece by Der Spiegel, another by New York Times. I mean, those are hard to ignore. Especially if they're genuine hit pieces that are just flat out lying.
Well, in retrospect, I'm glad that they happened. Yeah, in retrospect, I'm glad because, that Der Spiegel one, which I wrote about in my book, actually, this guy comes from Der Spiegel. It's the largest news magazine in Germany. I had heard that it's, a little left leaning and a little shady or whatever, but I was like, this seems like a great opportunity. Let's give it a go. He wanted to spend basically a full workday with me from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And he brought, a camera crew and the photographer and assistant and everything else, questioning me throughout the day. I sat and talked to the guy for a while. He watched me do, I think, 3 interviews that day. I usually don't do 3 in a day, but that day I happened to do 3 interviews. One of them was a live stream. Excuse me. And then I did a event at USC that night, a free speech event with the Ayn Rand Institute people. He writes the most ridiculous hit piece that I think he said, the grand master of the alt-right, something to that effect. And I have like something like he has TV good looks, which makes the alt-right seem like palatable.
Prime enabler.
Yeah, something like that. Now, meanwhile, all my interviews were about freedom and liberalism, and he watched all that stuff. And by the way, you want to know the mark of a truly bad person? He did not quote me directly once in that interview because in Germany, there is a law that if you are going to quote someone in a magazine or a newspaper, you have to run the quotes by him. So he sits with me for hours. I was completely open with the guy. And then, of course, the photo that they used that was on the cover of the German magazine and on the website is me sitting in my living room. My arms are out on the couch like this. I'm leaning back on the couch, and we have a huge American flag there. So it's like he's trying to paint me as some like ultra nationalist, racist, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, it ends with that we do this event at USC, and it ends with, and now as the guards with the armed guards close the doors, Rubin begins to speak, something to that effect. And the guards were there not because they were threatening anybody. They were there to make sure that we weren't threatened. I mean, the whole thing was ridiculous. And yeah, the New York Times has called me alt-right. But those battles, and it still happens, by the way, but those battles, they strengthened me. So that now when it comes, when I see the hit pieces here and there, they still come here and there. It's like, look at you guys. You're doing it again. You're doing it again. And by the way, a lot of people have woken up to it too, which is nice.
Isn't that cute?
Yeah.
Isn't that cute?
Look at you. Oh, congratulations, Daily Beast. You did it again. Oh, look. Oh, Mother Jones with a hit piece. What are we going to do?
Well, and does that kind of give you some credibility in a twisted way too? And I hate to say there's like sort of a punk rock backlash to it, but it's like, okay, well, if they hate me, then I must be having some kind of an effect.
Yeah, well, there was one, I forget what it was, just a few weeks ago. Finally, somebody called me far right. I think it was The Guardian. I'm 99% sure it was The Guardian, and they used to call me far right all the time. But they hadn't done it in about a year. And I saw one just 2 or 3 weeks ago where they called me far right. And I even tweeted out, I said, boy, it's like the greatest hits. Like, I kind of felt good. It was like, oh, they didn't forget about me. Like, yeah. Now, what they didn't do, of course, in the article, they didn't mention any of my far right positions. They just said far right. Maybe it was The Independent, actually. I'm forgetting which one it was. It was an article that was written about Rita Panahi, who is an Australian commentator who I absolutely love, who's really an old school liberal. So I guess you can call her a modern conservative, something like that. But it was about how she talks to these scary people, including far right YouTuber Dave Rubin. But then they don't. All right, so then lay out one far right position I hold. And of course they don't. And I tagged the lady who wrote it on Twitter, and I asked her, and she didn't respond. It's rinse and repeat with these people.
Shocking. And now you left Patreon, and I want to definitely get into locals. And I've got some questions from locals.
Sure.
Locals, I want to personally thank you for, because I don't know if you're aware, my channel literally got ripped off of YouTube, completely, lock, stock, everything. So it was, my entire account was vaporized. It wasn't.
I know the story, at least at an ancillary level, and it doesn't surprise me. And that's exactly why we built locals. We want people to have digital homes. That's it. I want to build something that is my home. And then, you know what? That's what we did. And then we said, okay, how about other people have homes? So Eric, you got your home, and guess what you do there has nothing to do with me. Crazy, right?
It works. Now, you were working with Jordan Peterson at first, right? And he kind of wound up doing ThinkSpot, and you did locals. I was wondering why you didn't merge the two together.
Yeah, so there's a lot there, and I can only, just for legal purposes, because there's still some things going on, I can only tell you so much. But in essence, when we both left Patreon, we did it together. We announced via 2 YouTube videos that we were doing it. And we said, okay, we're going to build something. And he had said, oh, I've got this tech that I've been building for a while. It wasn't really for this purpose of crowdfunding and monthly subscriptions, but I think it could kind of work. But we both said, and you can watch those videos from now, it's about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. I think it was January of 2019. You can find the videos where we both said, there's probably a lot of ways to skin a cat here, and we want to hit it from every angle. So Jordan's team started working on ThinkSpot, and I was involved. And I'll tell you a really wonderful thing about Jordan in just a moment. I was involved, and we were sort of guiding it in a certain way. But I felt that building it the way more so we've built locals was the more appropriate way, or just what I felt was better for what I wanted to do, meaning community first, not a sort of wider platform. I wanted to build an app first. These were just minor technical differences, by the way, not really that I had with Jordan, but just some of the team members. And Jordan and I were completely upfront. There was no tension there. I actually put in a whole bunch of money. It was the biggest investment I had ever made into ThinkSpot. And about a day or two later, Jordan, that was when it was announced that, he was ill and not doing well. And basically his guys said to me, look, he's not going to be able to be involved in this thing. And Jordan, to his credit, made sure that they gave me my money back, because I said, look, if Jordan can't be involved in this, I can't do it right now. I want to focus on the other thing that I'm working on. Jordan did not have to do that. I mean, the money had been wired, the documents were signed. That is a great credit to my good friend and a good man, Jordan Peterson. And so I would wrap that up by saying, so he basically had to step away for the last year and a half. We went full steam on locals. So locals is having a tremendous amount of success. And by the way, I will drop some info here, but on Monday, there will be a massive announcement. That will be a game-changing announcement to the future of locals that is happening right this moment, but I can't say more than that right now. All that being said, now that Jordan's re-emerging, I'm talking to his team. We're trying to figure out what the touch points could be there. Could there be, some situation where we start working together on some things and things like that? So just to be very clear, there is literally no tension there whatsoever. I always believe that, and I really mean this, like anyone else that right now wants to create a competitor to locals, it's like, go ahead and do it. And if you do it better than me, then that's going to up our game, or we'll merge, or we'll fight, or whatever. But that will all make a better product. I really do believe that. And the more the merrier,
what a coincidence. Man. I have a super chat from Robert Barnes.
Oh, Barnes, not Barnes.
And I think it's a very legitimate question, because we've got in the news right now, Trump is going to create his own social platform. Essentially, that's what's being said. What are some of the obstacles, financial, legal, and technological, that he's going to face when trying to start his own platform? He has
extraordinary, I covered this on my show a couple of days ago. He has extraordinary stuff that he's going to have to deal with. Okay, so on the technological front, decentralized servers, right? Decentralized storage. The idea that Amazon just won't be able to blow up the servers, or that if Trump buys a server farm, whether it's in Utah or in Europe, that they don't just cut the cord or blow up the building, or God knows what these people could do. So he's going to have a huge problem on the server front. He's going to have a payment processor problem, because if the payment processors, if say Stripe or whatever payment, there's a series of payment processors, if they won't work with Trump or a Trump associated product, well, he's got a whole bunch of problems. Now, there's answers on both. They're not perfect answers yet, but decentralized storage, it's starting to come around. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening. decentralized payments. I mean, this is what blockchain is, right? Like there's a lot of interesting things that can be done with crypto. We're working on all of this stuff. And again, we've got some announcements coming on Monday. So there's a lot of cool things happening on those fronts. Trump has other problems because the focus on what he's going to build is, we've been able to fly under the radar at some level, even though I'm a public person, I'm in this fight. I'm not Trump. So it's like the focus on what he built. On top of that, getting the right people, I think is going to be very difficult for him. I can tell you this, as we've tried to raise money for locals and we've had a lot of success and things are going really well, and it always comes up, well, are you a right-wing network? Are you a Trump-friendly group of people? Meanwhile, as you know, more of the coordination for the January 6th Capitol riots took place on Facebook than any other platform, yet they blew up Parler because Parler was the outsider, right? Parler got money from, I think, a family, an oil family in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. They didn't get Silicon. It's the Mercer family, but am I mistaken on that?
Yeah, Mercer's and it happened to Gab too, 2 years prior with the synagogue shootings.
Right. So what is it? How did the Mercers make their money? Am I mistaken on how?
It could be. I'm not sure. All I know is that they have a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. But the point is that they were outsiders to the Silicon Valley money. It made it very easy for the Silicon Valley guys to kick them out of the App Store, blow up the servers. Like they're not on our team. Right. It's sort of a mafia tactic. Like the new guy's in town. No, he's not moving in on our territory. That's not going to work. Right. So Trump will have all those problems. And then, again, can you hire the right people? Can you get the right people around it? And then can you onboard the right people? Now, I understand, or from what I understand, Mike Lindell, my pillow guy, he's been working on something. It's all, look, I want Trump to do it and keep rattling the cage and keep breaking this stuff up. We need some of this big tech stuff to fail. And does Trump even have the money? Like, is he going to self-fund it? And where is he going to locate the company? Like, there's so many things. But again, when I heard it, maybe it doesn't sound real, but truly, as now, I guess, a tech guy, I heard the news and I was like, great, more chances for us. More, the more of us that there are, they can't take out everybody. They just can't take out everybody. So let's just get more people. And who knows, maybe Trump's thing comes along and for some, by some miraculous thing, they came up with a solution that we couldn't figure out, or we came up with a solution that they couldn't figure out. And that's the beauty of the human mind.
Now, you will also agree, though, that the network effect is still invaluable to what you do. For example,
of course,
I'm on Locals, and I benefit by the fact that Viva Fry's on Locals, and a lot of his audience comes over to me. I'm a much smaller, version of it, but they're saying, okay, well, if I go to Locals, there's 2 channels now that I like, and then hopefully it'll be 3 or 4 or 5. So the more creators we encourage to come on, the more incentive there is for people to join, because there's a wider, variety, or a more diverse timeline, I guess you will.
Yeah, well, of course. And, this is one of the challenges that we have right now. And we're having every debate internally about this is, okay, well, if you subscribe to Eric, you put a couple bucks in for Eric, and you subscribe to Dave, and you subscribe to Viva and Barnes and Scott Adams, well, suddenly you're at $25 a month and you got 5 creators. Now that's kind of cool. You're in their worlds, and you can communicate directly with them and all that kind of stuff. But we don't want to make this that to get all your Locals creators, right, that it's going to suddenly cost you $200 a month. Which by the way, that's what cable used to cost people, $150 a month. You'd have a gajillion channels. Yep. What we wanted to do first was let's build digital homes for people. Let's build Eric his home. Dave's going to have his home. Scott Adams going to have his home. And everyone can treat that differently. And now what we have to do is figure out what the bundling option is on that if people want to be in the bundle. So if you and Viva and Robert want to come together and be like, you know what? Each, I don't know off the top of my head what you guys all charge per month, but let's say you charge $5 and they charge $5. But you know what? If people subscribe to both, we'll do it for $8 a month, and we'll take a little bit less because now together we're stronger. Well, then that can begin the bundling process. And then let's say, well, there's a creator that comes in who's a little smaller than both of you guys. And he goes, if you let me in, I'll give you half of what my subscription is because I want to be in your network. So it's a very cool free association libertarian idea on how to build out networks. And I think what's really cool about this is we're building television networks with no overhead. I mean, if you took the top 10 creators on Locals right now, Tulsi Gabbard too, and Greg Gutfeld, we've got better talent than most cable channels. And we've got other tricks coming that I can't tell you right now, but there's some very cool things happening.
Well, and those partnerships also would increase, I'll just say the stickiness. There's probably a better term for it. But people are less likely to leave if 5 channels that they're, paying the one fee for are there, because we kind of, have our ebbs and flows depending on what's happening at the time. We can't always have A+ content. We're not all Dave Rubin,
Does Dave Rubin always have A+ content?
Yeah, he's pretty close. The rest of us are human. So we have to kind of go, okay, well, that good, but not necessarily, as strong. Now, I've got a super chat here from Ziggy Shrug wanting to know, when are you moving to Florida? I know that's a popular question.
I got my director right here. He just moved here from Seattle. He's not ready to go yet. He's just enjoying. He's just starting to enjoy the sunshine here. Look. Everyone knows my feelings about Florida. Florida's open. I think Ron DeSantis is probably the best governor we've got in the United States right now. I think he's also ready for the fight, which the fight is coming to him if it isn't at his doorstep already. I've always liked Florida. My folks have a little condo in Florida, so we used to go down there to vacation. I like warm weather. I could probably even deal with the summers in Florida, which I know could be pretty brutal. Most of my family is back East Coast. The taxes are lower. We're probably going to move locals down there, regardless of whether I stay or not. We're going to move our team down there and our offices down there, obviously for tax purposes, but also just business is better, and tech is moving to Miami. As you know, they're all fleeing the dystopian land of San Francisco, and they're all moving to Florida. So Florida's in my future for sure. I've got 2 businesses now. I've got things that I would need to wrap up here. And by the way, and I've said this before, I'm really hoping that this Gavin Newsom recall works, because we've got the 2 million signatures. And it's like, if we can recall the guy, and it's not, I don't have some grand illusions that we're going to get some great, real libertarian governor of California. But, Ronald Reagan was once the governor of California. So a California conservative does exist. There are people that are fiscal Californians, fiscally conservative Californians. So miracles do happen. So I want to fight. I'm going to fight tooth and nail to get rid of that guy. And then let's see what happens. And then we'll reevaluate. So if you want to pick this up in a couple months, I'd be happy to do so.
Okay. Well, last time it was Gray Davis and we got Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I guess was a slight improvement over here.
It was a slight improvement, right? I mean, he was a conservative of sorts, right? I think he probably cut budgets a little bit, but they all do a lot of spending too. It's all a mixed bag. But I think it's probably fair to say that most Californians right now, if their heads were on straight, which it's very unclear to me sometimes, they would probably say Schwarzenegger would be more moderate than Gavin Newsom.
Oh, by far. I can't see a real hardcore conservative being governor, but you might get a centrist that leans right, and at least it can be fiscally conservative. Maybe that'll fly.
Yeah, I think that's possible. Look, I had Adam Carolla on my show. He said he would consider it, but I know Adam. He's got a really good life and a lot of dough and a gorgeous house. I don't know that he's going to do it. But Rick Grinnell, I think he could possibly do it. And he's born and bred in California, former ambassador to Germany, of course, and acting secretary of national intelligence. He's a brilliant guy and a good man, and wants to keep this state in order. So, maybe there's a chance. You never know.
It's a long shot. Now, one, I guess, last question, because I know you're getting short on time here. Do you foresee that there will be tours again?
Oh, I hope so. Right now, so we're working on a Florida tour for me it's supposed to be mid-April, but it's getting short on time because there's just so many logistical problems, even as the states are opening up, with rules that are changing every day and how many people can be inside and everything. The thing that I missed most out of 2020, beyond seeing my family, which finally in the last couple of months I've been able to see a little bit more. I actually haven't seen my parents since this whole thing began. I'm going to see them for the first time next week, which is just crazy, just absolutely crazy. But the thing that I miss most is sort of in this orbit was that, my book came out on April 28th. I had a 6-week tour. We were going to do about 30 cities in the US, and then I was going to go to Europe. I was going to go to Australia. We were going to work on Japan and Israel. I mean, I was really going to spend a year back out on the road like I did with Jordan. And I loved every second of that. I loved the travel. I loved going to the places, eating the different foods, meeting the people. I loved the meet and greets. As I said on my interview with Jordan a few weeks ago, it was a dream. When I think back to that year, it's like, man, did that really happen? It was so awesome and so cool. So I was really looking forward to that. So I can't wait to get out there because we've been reduced to this thing. And, this is nice. It's nice talking to people on Skype, but it's not like talking to people for real. And there's nothing like getting up in front of a crowd and
Live
sharing that live moment and feeling the laughter and feeling the love. And if you're with Jordan, feeling the pain in the room, and then the release of the pain at the end. And that's why I went on tour with him, basically, because I would make people laugh at the beginning. He'd do about an hour and a half. And then I'd make people laugh again at the end with him. We do a Q&A at the end. And that way it felt holistic. It felt full. So I can't wait to get back out on tour. I think it's going to be messy for another, like, it could be more than a year still, where certain states will be okay. Florida's going to be all right. You'll be able to tour in Texas, a couple others. But, are they going to do anything? What are you going to do? I'm going to do a 25% comedy club in California. That's ridiculous. Like that's a comic or a performer's nightmare. You want to be in sold out rooms. It's not just because you want the money, though. It's really not. It's because you want that freaking energy that when you get a laugh, you do something, that room explodes and you can feel it and everyone can feel it. But instead, you're going to do comedy in front of 10% of the people sitting 16 feet away from each other, and they can only have one drink, or, because if they get drunk, they might get closer. It's like, it's all bananas. So we'll see. But I can't wait to get back out on tour whenever it happens.
Well, you need the crowded room too, because of the influence of the people. Like, the joke is going to go harder if half the room is laughing. It's contagious and it goes over. But if there's enough space, it's sort of like a forest fire. That's not going to spread. It's got too many breaks along the way.
One of the coolest things that I experienced with Jordan is that, because we did so many amazing theaters all over the world. And the last show that we did together was in Sydney at the Sydney Opera House. And I did not know. I mean, most of people watching this can picture the Sydney Opera House. If you Google it, I mean, it's right on the water there. It's out on the boardwalk. It's the most cool, architecturally interesting, sort of looks like a clam, like really fascinating building. I did not know till we did that show, till we did the mic check, that it was a theater. Usually they would call it a theater in the round, meaning the audience is around you in a circle, but this was really a theater in a square. So you had the audience that way and you were sort of in a box, they were behind you. And I got a couple of huge laughs that night, and to feel laughs hit you from every which way, because what you're talking about is, because usually you do a laugh and then it comes back at you. You get a reaction, it comes back at you this way. But to get it every which way, it was just awesome. Just awesome. Yeah.
That had to be goosebumps.
Oh, it was wild. It was just like, can this be real? I don't know.
Well, that's a perfect happy note to end on. Thank you so much for coming on and doing what you do.
Eric, it was my pleasure, and I'm thrilled that you're on Locals and that you're finding success and that we've offered you a little bit of an oasis in this madness. And I hope anyone watching will check out what we're doing with Locals, because we're trying to fix this thing. Everybody just complains all day, but we're trying to do a little more than complain,